Real Estate Rewired.
Welcome to Real Estate Rewired AI with a Heart with Gus Waite, the show where we talk all things real estate and AI. And today I'm excited to be joined by William Liu, who's coming in from California. William, tell us a little about yourself, your business, and your background.
Hi, Gus. Thanks for having me. So first of all, I'm William Liu. I'm a father of two of girls, and also I'm married to my beautiful wife, Anita Wong, who's also my co-founder at Give Rise Capital. So we started Give Rise Capital a few years ago, and it's basically a real estate investing company. And we've since acquired two multifamily properties in Dallas, now about 160 plus doors, and looking for a third acquisition.
Fantastic. And you had mentioned previously you were the chief of marketing, and what industry was that in?
My last posting was a chief marketing officer at an online education institution. So really just focusing on all aspects of the business. I like to tell people it's like 10% marketing, 90% chief. So really involved in the business, the finance components of it, basically how to kind of create synergies on a more strategic level. So.
And what do you think, what skills or interests or, strengths did you bring from that role into your role of asset management of properties?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I tell people that I'm much better at asset management than property management. I think that the day-to-day stuff is kind of what I equate property management to, but asset management is about creating value for that specific asset that you're handling. I think for me personally, it came out in two ways. One, was really kind of like the data and the finance and the numbers portion of it. And then two, also capital raising, because capital raising and marketing, I think, are very similar. And so you need to be able to have the capital both on the debt side and the equity side to be able to purchase the assets.
And so, walk me through this. It's an interesting concept, asset management. So what are some of the blind spots that someone has who's thinking about purchasing real estate as an investment?
I think the number one thing I tell people is, and one realization that I also kind of made is like, it's basically you're buying a pre-existing business, right? So, and it has all of the good parts and all of the bad parts of those businesses. But once you kind of sign the contract and you wire all the money, you own everything that happened prior to it. So a lot of it, I feel, is like really understanding like the finance portions of it, like creating those kind of workflows, creating those like systems. Like basically, if you think through like a business, there is a cadence to it. So like every year you have to do a budget. Every month you have to look through finances. You have to go through reimbursements of staff, or if you're the owner that you kind of bought some stuff and you need to be reimbursed. You need to go through your accounting. You need to make sure that you have the right systems for leasing and intake of applications of new tenants, renewals, even thinking through around like how to beautify the apartment so that when new people look at it, they want to rent it, right? So like all those things, I equate it to you need to have like good people, you need to have good systems, and then also have the right technology to back it up. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the analogy that sort of pops into my mind, right, is I'm assuming someone's got, a change in their fortunes and all of a sudden they have a little bit of cash and they go, wow, let me buy real estate. That always goes up. That's great. And the analogy, I would think it's like someone who's really good at making bagels and they open a bagel shop and they go, whoa, wait a minute. Now I've got suppliers, I've got taxes, I've got parking spaces, I've got equipment, I've got employees, I've got payroll, I've got location, I've got marketing and sales. There's a lot more to this than just taking some money and buying a rental property and going, oh, well, my mortgage is $2,000 and I'm getting $2,800 in rent. I'm all set. Would that be an accurate perception of what a lot of people think?
I think sometimes like they look at it more from like the all rosy picture, kind of you mentioned. It's like, oh, I got enough of the basics and I'll kind of figure it out. And I think I was actually just talking to my wife about it. I think it does require a little bit of luck in terms of like making sure that you come in the right market, maybe even the right economic conditions. But you also need to have the right skill sets. You need to have the right experiences. You need to have the right team members around you, specifically partners, whether they're limited partners or general partners, right? So I think all those things have to kind of work out in order for you to kind of be able to go full cycle on a property and do it successfully. I think if any one of those things, there's a little bit of a hiccup, I think it creates some challenges. Like right now, like we're going through some of those challenges with one of our properties because it's an older property, a Class C, and specifically our demographic is more Latino based. And because of administration policies right now, that is making it really difficult. And then on top of that, there's also softening of rent, especially with that type of asset class in that Dallas submarket. So
Got it. So there's always there's the unknowns, and then there's the unknown unknowns, right? I mean, it's interesting. I like, there's what I know, there's what I know I don't know, but the 90% of life is I don't know what I don't know, and circumstances change. So within that, with what you can control, I always like to frame it like this, William, right? AI, I call it black, white, and gray. Like, so the black is what it should do 100% of the time, right? So if a doctor needs to text me 24 hours ahead, say, hey, Gus, your appointment's tomorrow, 100% of the time, I'm cool with that, because if they're wrong, I call them up. But when I'm with the doctor and he's reading my blood results, 100% of the time, I want that to be the doctor. But there's this whole gray area, and it's changing every day with every new LLM model, with every new workflow, with every new bell and whistle they're trying to sell you. So what is your process for like identifying the tasks that need to happen in all these different areas, and then identifying which of those should be implemented by yourself and which of them you should bring a third-party tool in to solve that problem?
yeah, I love that framing of from the color scheme wise. I look at it kind of like using some of my military background as kind of crawl, walk, run, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how I look at the how I should maybe do the handoff to AI, with maybe like run being it doing most of the heavy lifting, and then crawl basically meaning that I'm still doing most of it, and then kind of that walk, I'm basically trying to figure out like what can I lift or kind of give to the AI to be able to do, what's its accuracy, is it going to save me time, like, can it get me to that 80% kind of place that I'm kind of looking for to make it more efficient for me. But that's ultimately how I judge it, is does it make it more efficient for me as a business owner, not just now but in the future.
And how do you make the decision on whether to build it yourself or to bring in a third party, tool and plug that in?
I'm not the most like technical person, so I
Mm-hmm.
always subscribe to the if there's like the build, buy, and rent, I'm probably just gonna rent it, and so that's kind of what my wife and I've been doing, just experimenting with different models right now. I think we obviously started out with ChatGPT like everyone else does. I've since kind of started to enhance it with Claude, just because I find it performs a little bit better with some of the more data and the finance analysis, and also kind of like how it does like the charts and visualizations without me having to kind of go through all the different Excel sheets. But now I was just trying to figure out like what are the things that it's good at, and then do I need to keep another one, and then as we're kind of going through it, how do we create the workflows for our other partners? Because in my ideal environment, if I train it with, if I give it all the right information, kind of create that brain within, let's just say a certain project, and then set up the different tasks, like I eventually just want the task where I could just push a button, or it's even just automated so that I get it at the cadence that I want. So
Got it. And how many hours a week do you think you're spending on learning it, William, or perfecting it? Like, how much time is that taking from you?
I mean, I tell people like on a good day, like maybe I get like 2 to 3 hours of like solid work, because I have two kids under two that are just kind of running around the house. And so I think I try to spend like at least maybe 25% of my time like experimenting, and then like the other 25% like actually doing work. And then the other like kind of 50% is just like whatever else like kind of comes up. So try to be as proactive as I can, but obviously like 2 to 3 hours like a week, or 2 to 3 hours a day, kind of multiply that throughout the week. It's not your standard 40 hours a week, but that's also the reason why my wife and I kind of pivoted, is so that we have the time flexibility to do what we want to do. And obviously, if there's projects that are more urgent or I have deadlines, I'll do an all-nighter. But my main time frame of working is usually morning or evenings.
Got it. So it's interesting. So one of the things, I was listening to a podcast yesterday where I think Goldman and Blackstone and a bunch of these guys, they're going to pay the big LLM models $6 billion to go into PE firms and basically say, hey, listen, you've got a portfolio of 200 businesses. We're going to, put 15 engineers in each of those businesses and automate as much of the workflow as possible. Because obviously in the PE world, if you can get
Mhm.
4 million per employee as opposed to 400,000, their stock goes through the roof. So there's this big play
Mhm.
in those bigger enterprises now to like, hey, let's figure out how to eliminate jobs because
Mhm.
there's $11 trillion in wages in the US. That's the play for them in the
Yeah.
larger enterprises. I look at the ones that I'm most attached to because this is the world I was in, this is the world you're in, is how do the quote unquote small players, the
Mhm.
mom and pop operators, and I consider that 1 to 10 million a year, right, with 1 to 50 employees. How do we collectively sort of come together and say, like, for instance, you, William, if you had 9 other guys that were, or folks, people, men and
Mhm.
women, who were in that similar space that you were in, that were in different markets, right? So they're
Mhm.
in Minneapolis or they're in Hawaii or whatever. They're not quote unquote competing with you.
Mhm.
Do you see a world where you come together with a bunch of folks and say, hey, listen, here's our workflows, here's our challenges, here's what we want to build. Let's kind of do this together, test it together, monitor it together, make it
Mhm.
right together, and feel more empowered so that you're not doing it all alone.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we already kind of do that a little bit. Like we have a community called that we've kind of built like more Asian American, like more second generation immigrants, and so we kind of get together every now and then and just kind of share what we're doing. Kind of like how and we're all like in different markets, so and maybe even like not just in multifamily, but like SDRs, like LTRs, like it's just more like how do we kind of knowledge share within a community? Because especially if it's just, I'll use myself and my wife as an example. We're the only like full-time employees. Like we have fractional contractors
Sure.
that help us out with social media or like with bookkeeping. But for us, like it's only the two of us. So having other perspectives or just having other people hear about, what's going on and just be able to kind of share in that community space, I think is very, very valuable. Like that's definitely something that technology cannot replace for sure. So I think being able to share and bond is very important.
And listen, I also think that was the American dream, right? I mean, 50 years ago, the American dream was to open a hardware store on Main Street and have your kid work in it and leave an asset for the next generation. And
Absolutely.
as that's disappeared, it's kind of ironic to me. I almost feel like AI might enable us
I
to
agree.
actually create that vision again.
I totally agree. I feel that like AI is gonna be able to supercharge like mom and pop operators that are willing to embrace it, and we're able to move much faster than say the enterprises. And so like the large companies, like what they're gonna have to do in order to be able to get their share price, they're just gonna have to cut jobs, whether or not it's related to AI or not, just because they're gonna see the immediate impact on their balance sheets. And obviously they're trying to do well by their shareholders, but that really does suck for the people that are employed by them. And I'm also I'm very pessimistic around where the job market's going to go, especially with
Yeah.
job displacement, because I've seen like what AI can do. I'm like, why would I pay someone that can like just fresh out of college, no knock on them, like when I can basically, train an AI for a fraction of
Mhm.
the time and then be able to do it exactly the way that I want to do it with my experiences. And that sucks because if you don't have those experiences, it really puts you at a disadvantage now, I feel.
100%, William. And I'll tell you, it's interesting. So I literally, I was in a, I was in a coffee shop up here on the Cape and I was talking to this guy, Gary Cady, and his business was for 30 years. He would go into dental practices, right? And double their income. So take them from 3 million to 6 million. And then he would engineer their exit from the business by selling it to a PE firm. And he did that for 30 years. He worked with over 7,000 dentists doing that. So I start talking to him about the AI and where I'm at. And he's like, hey, Gus, do you think I could create a $5 million a year business with a 70% EBITDA with one employee? And I said, I don't know. Let's try that. And so we literally, He hired my son, who's a documentary filmmaker.
Mhm.
We went into his shed. I brought out my designer from San Francisco, who's a 25-year-old
Mhm.
NYU grad who's building agents and, got that whole thing. And we literally iterated over 72 hours. We would iterate it in the morning.
Mhm.
They would build it all night, and then we would come back the next morning. But this is what was the amazing part about it, William. They were all in their early 20s. And the world that they're stepping into, even from 5 years ago, is not the world that they were told was going to exist. Like, get a degree, get out, get a job.
Mhm.
And I'm also seeing the same thing for people in their early 60s.
Mhm.
That world does not exist. Hey, I'm going to retire and move to Florida. It's just too expensive. And so it was really interesting to see these two groups kind of come together and go, wow, we're kind of in the same space. Like, I'm in my early 60s. This isn't the world that I thought I was going to inherit. I'm in my early 20s. This isn't the world that I'm going to inherit. Here's the
Mhm.
question. Let's assume 10 years from now, there is no work,
Okay.
right? I mean, let's assume that, and this is one of the spaces people are going, and this is why you're in a really good space. If you don't own assets, you're basically going to be left out of participating in an economy. Then it becomes, all right, well, great if there's UBI or whatever, unless there's a
Mhm.
revolution and we kill everybody, like, let's assume we're still here and people have to do something. Does it become, what do you actually love to do? What really fires you up? And
Mhm.
how do you utilize AI to do that? Whether it's making movies or whatever. Is that the world that you see 10 years from now?
I do see more people being self-employed. Uh, I think that makes the most sense. Like if you're not able to necessarily find a job or you get displaced from a job and then you're kind of sick with corporate life. And I'm right now I just turned 41 and I like the more of my friends that I talk to, especially like from grad school, from corporate life that are in their 40s, like trying to manage kids, trying to manage investments, a marriage, and you have parents like getting older, and then you have like siblings, and like you got vacations. Like it's so much to handle. Like I don't know
Mhm.
how you can do that, and then add on top of that a job and do everything well. So I do feel that it may reset some priorities, and that people maybe just feel that I'm going to take a bet on myself because I had someone tell me that a few years ago. It's like, and I was trying to go back to W-2 after my first daughter was born. And he basically said, you're just trading your time for money. And like you
Yeah.
said, Gus, around like owning assets, like that's always going to put you in a much better position than rather than here's my time. I'm just going to give it to you for, however much, a few dollars like an hour. That doesn't really, you're not really growing any type of asset. You're really just trading time for money there. And luckily, we already had assets, and so now it's just around how do we steward those assets and be able to kind of grow at a just an appropriate clip. Like if I can get like 8-9% like for the next few years, like we'll be perfectly fine for the rest of our lives if we don't acquire anything else, right? So. Then it becomes, as you said, like what is our purpose? What is our mission, like
Mhm.
on Earth? Like what are we put here to do? What are we passionate about kind of doing? So I do feel like it's going to accelerate some of that momentum, and the people are going to, or the right people are going to ask those type of questions rather than just say, "Woe is me, this sucks," and it's like AI took all my job, took my job, and I'm don't have anything to do, right? So I do feel there's a subset that we still probably need to provide from a government, maybe a state aspect to help everyone. I think UBI is a good concept. I just don't know how we'll be able to do it with where the current
Yeah,
federal deficit
100%.
is.
Well, and listen, and what the good thing about this, William, is, and a lot of these large LLM model people are now hiring philosophers,
Mm.
ethicists, and economic people to kind of say, hey, actually, we don't really know. Like, we really have to do a deep dive into this to like kind of like somebody's got to at least start asking the questions. I mean, that's what I like about at least Andrew Yang is like saying, hey, guys, let's at least have a conversation about where this might go. But this is where I go with the AI. What's essential and true? And I feel like what is true, regardless of technology, is human beings fundamentally are a cooperative species who want to be connected to other human beings
Mhm.
authentically, who want to be connected with themselves authentically. Like, what do I like to do with my time? What makes me happy? And then connected to some sort of spiritual mystery, whatever you want to call it, some sense that this isn't just about being here for 80 or 90 years and plugging away and then dying with no meaning. So one of the things that I started, I'd be curious because this is like, this would be right up your alley, William, is I started something called the Independent Broker Collective. And what I realized is there's all these independent real estate brokers who are not part of the Compass and the Keller Williams, not in that world. They've got 15 agents in Cleveland. They inherited the business from their dad. They're feeling completely overwhelmed with AI, with like, how do I even do this? And I brought them all together. I brought in my guys, started a school, started putting AI agents pre-built in there, gave them access to the tech guys. And we meet twice a month. And basically like, okay, guys, let's all figure out what's the lowest hanging fruit that we can take off our list right now, whether it's speed to lead, predictive analytics, whatever it is. Let's collectively do this together, measure it, monitor it, make it right. Then we all come back 2 weeks later. Hey, this didn't work, but this worked. And hey, William's great and get great response. How's he doing it that I'm not doing it? And so actually there is this community now of people who are coming together on a regular basis and doing it together. And I think about you, and I think about you with the Asian American community, and I think about that idea of being connected, and it can be very isolating having 2 little kids. I was there, right? You're like, your world can get very small very quick. And how do you think that's a model for moving forward?
I do, and I like that example that you mentioned a few minutes ago around like someone in their 60s and someone in their 20s, like because like someone in the 60s like has the lived life experiences,
Right.
both personal and professional, but then you have like a 20-year-old who, is still at the forefront of their life and beginning their career. So I think be able to kind of match them together and be able to they have different purposes because they're in different stages of life at that point, but you're really able to kind of create that synergy and that union where they can kind of, I guess, coalesce together towards one common path, right? So I think like the mastermind like approach, or like where you kind of get a group of people and kind of be able to share your challenges and your wins and be able to share different thoughts around what you're doing and best practices, like I think that's absolutely kind of needed in order to just, especially from people who are maybe a few steps ahead. And I think that's always kind of what I love about like mentorship, and what I tell people is like, just try to find someone that's a little bit ahead of you, because if you don't see the path that you're trying to go on, if you don't have that clear picture, that clear vision of it, it's kind of like a dream. It just starts like dissipating over time. Like you need to have like something tangible that you can hook into and be able to say, oh, someone else was doing it. And more importantly, like from a cultural perspective, like with Asian Americans, like I feel like sometimes there's like that little bit of that bamboo ceiling. Like we need permission to be able to say, we can do this. Like for me, I know it was very difficult to just say, I don't really want to do W-2, because I was raised all my life to say that I should climb the corporate ladder and I need to do this. But when I was in my executive role, I wasn't very happy. Like I'm much happier now, like doing what I want to do with my flexibility, spending time with my family, making that type of judicious decision, but not necessarily being hooked to my desk because what someone else said. If I want to go on vacation, I just talk to my wife. No one can fire me except my wife, and if she does, then we have much bigger problems than that. But it's like I get to live life on my terms, and it's a little bit more non-traditional, but I think there's been a little bit of social programming where it's like, if you do all these things, then you can be successful. And I think right now that's kind of where AI has disrupted that social contract, where it basically said, if you have a computer science degree, you can be a software engineer, and then you can get a job at a big tech company, and you'll be set for life with all of your RSUs and your paycheck there, right? And that's no longer the world that we kind of live.
And listen, I think that, and I see it a lot. I work with a lot of first generation Americans who, whose parents were poor and sacrificed massively to get them into college with the idea that they were going to do better and it was going to be a safe world. And then to sort of like have to turn around to your parents and go, yeah, thanks for all that sacrifice, but all that sacrifice that you did to get me to a place where you thought I was going to do better than you and that was going to be guaranteed, that world no longer exists. And and I could see it within very traditional cultures, whether it's the Indian culture, the Asian American culture, the Jamaican culture. I mean, any culture where you are 1 or 2 generations removed from extreme poverty, that belief system is really powerful and takes a lot of courage to sort of break out of.
Mhm.
It's kind of like, hey, do I stay here and be miserable and this job's going to be eliminated in 3 years anyway? Then I'm really screwed. If it doesn't get eliminated, I'm still screwed because I'm miserable. But if I jump into this other thing and I failed my parents, and their sacrifice is now not being honored. These are tough things to answer.
Yeah, and it's that fear, and it kind of going back to like the angry yang kind of concept. Like I did read his book, like when he had his presidential run, and my wife was actually involved in parts of his campaign on the local side of things. But I think the reason why UBI was so interesting was because it met like the base desires, right? Like you have enough to pay your rent and have food. But if you don't have those things, and we're seeing it right now with where everything's at with higher gas prices, inflation's coming a little bit, it's coming back up a little bit higher. You're seeing that K-shaped economy, like the rich is getting richer, the poor are getting poor. Like it's very terrible conditions if you're in that social economic, kind
Yeah.
of that area where it is getting worse for you, and you see other people benefiting off of it. Like, so it feels like kind of a dog eat dog world. So I do feel like if there's something in there that can meet the base like needs of the individual and the family, then yes, we can get to that point where on the Maslow hierarchy, we can talk through more purpose and more mission, like what's the higher end of things. But if we can't meet the base needs, it's just gonna continue to get worse. So again, maybe too pessimistic view of things.
No, but listen, the truth is, and I always say this: roof over the head, food in the fridge, healthy, a few people that love me, that I love, and a couple of extra bucks to go out to dinner or take a vacation. Like anything beyond that is a mental attitude, right? Like whether you're driving a Honda Accord or a Lamborghini, I mean, that's a different animal. But the truth is, if you don't have affordable housing, I mean, if you're housing insecure, if you're 1 or 2 paychecks away from not being able to pay your rent, there's very little mental bandwidth to be getting into AI and trying to create a business. Like, it's just not realistic. If you're worried that you're 62 and you think you might have cancer, but you can't go to the hospital because you don't have insurance, and you're just hoping to make it 3 more years, you can't live in that space. So my hope is that however we figure it out, and this is what's always weird about it, William, there's enough stuff in the world. There's enough stuff in the world currently for everyone to have a house, everyone to eat, everyone to have access to healthcare. It's just a decision that we've made that profits are more important. That, ultimately, so I'll ask you about this. We're going down a rabbit hole, but I kind of like it, William. So if the cost of goods becomes zero, how do you have an economy?
That's a good question. I have to think on that a little bit. I think if the traditional system of how we exchange, like, you have a fiat currency, like for money and all that stuff like that, then you almost basically have to build like an entirely like new system on top of it. It's, I guess in that, I don't necessarily see that everything, maybe then you kind of break it apart as like the absolute things that you need. Like maybe it's like roof over your head, like food to eat. Then if it's anything like additional on top of it, then maybe that's still traded on the normal kind of exchange kind of policy that we kind of have right now. But maybe I kind of see more like a tier system now that I kind of think about that. So it's like if you want even more, then you have to kind of pay for it, which I guess to me that makes sense how you do it.
Well, let me give you the darkest view of it, because I know you'll like this, William. I know there's a pessimist in there, okay? The darkest view of it for me is money disappears and it's all based on social credits. So, the better person I am, the higher up the food chain I get to go. And who determines what the better person is? Is it the politician saying, hey, if you say really nice things about me all the time, you're going to be able to rise up this food chain. If you don't participate, you're going to be able to go down this food chain. And are we then controlled in that way? Where
that's interesting.
everything that we do online, in person, is recorded, monitored, and nobody's telling me to do anything. But if I behave a certain way, I'm going to be able to live better. That's the dystopian view for me.
Okay, so like almost like a caste system, a little bit based off
Yeah,
of relationship capital, I guess.
right. Right. Now we're getting into the Black Mirror zone, right? On the other hand, the idea is if we can sort of break out of that and, humanity's view becomes if any one human being on the planet is suffering, we've lost. That the goal is that every human being on the planet be taken care of, regardless of whether or not they're worthy of it.
I like that. It's like we're all in it together rather than it's the individual.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, can we break out of and go, wait a minute, because we still have this sort of lack mentality, right? I mean, I think, I love that Yuval Harari book, Sapiens. I think we talked about that a little
Yep.
bit. Think about sports. I mean, you go to a stadium and there's the red shirts and the blue shirts, and somehow people get crazy that the San Francisco 49ers, that's my team, and we want them to kill, the LA. There's a lizard brain in there that like, hey, that tribe coming over the mountain, we'd better figure out a way to kill them because they're different than us. We don't know what they want from us. Like the fear thing, can we get rid of that lizard brain and turn it into, hey, guess what, guys? We have enough of everything. Let's just make sure everybody's sharing in that. And then from there, let's trust that people are creative and enthusiastic and cooperative. Yeah, there's always going to be 2 or 3% sociopaths that are going to try to ruin it for quote unquote the rest of us. But it seems to me the vast majority of people that I run into are good people.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like that. Like the way I kind of look at it is like if we're able to get our political leaders like aligned, then that may impact a change. Again, not really optimistic on that end of things. I kind of subscribe more to grassroots efforts, like do for the one that you can do, or do for the many that you do for the one kind of thing. So I think I just try to do what I can kind of do, and I feel like if everyone, like more people are similar of that mindset, then it will create that type of change more from the bottom up rather than top down. And then hopefully like kind of meet in the middle as we kind of go through it, because again, like it's like my spiritual point of view is that we have limited time here on earth. We're all given different types of skill sets and treasures and assets. Like some have more, some have less, but those who are given more are also demanded more of, right? Meaning that it's not just for myself and my family. Like once that's taken care of, then I already have much excess. Like then it's my responsibility to also give that back to the community, to give, whether it's the church, whether it's specific charitable kind of endeavors that my wife and I are passionate about. Like those are things that we're charged for. So.
Love that. Well, listen, William, this has been a great conversation, man. This is what I love about this show. I like to go where it goes. Who is your ideal client profile? What problems do they have, and how are you solving them, and how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, specifically, you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. You can find me, William Liu. You'll be able to see a girl dad, former chief marketing officer, or retired chief marketing officer is the way I kind of put it on there. I think for us, like we're always looking for prospective investors. I think for our investor base, it's like someone like very similar to my wife and myself, ones that are like married, I have young kids, like more Asian American, Bay Area. Maybe you're like in tech. Maybe there's like you have church affiliations, Duke community, USC. Like those are kind of like the dimensions of our avatar, so to speak. So.
Got it. And how do people get in touch? Oh, you mentioned how people get in touch with you. And how old are your kids, William? How old are your kids?
My youngest just turned 6 months, and then my oldest she just turned 2 years old. So she's walking and talking and everything like that.
It's pretty quiet over there, William. What do you got them? Where do you got them? Are they out of the house today? What's happening?
I think they're outside, but maybe it's also the noise canceling headphones right now.
Got it. All right, man. Listen, it was an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for watching Real Estate Rewired, AI with a Heart. Remember, the only purpose of AI is to do more of what you love and less of what you don't. If you'd like to reach out, you can reach out to the show. If you'd like to be on the show, give us a call. And William, thanks again for being on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gus.
If you've got value from today's episode, hit subscribe, leave a comment. I'd love to know what you're thinking. If you're ready to turn what you love into your superpower and take what you hate off your plate, schedule your free AI discovery call. The link is in the description and pinned comment. I'm Gus Waite. Until next time.